Yo, what's up, YouTube? Wanted to drop this video to talk about that. Stephon Marbury recently came out and he was saying, that it's not right for Jordans to cost as much as they do, yada yada. But so here's the deal with that whole situation, right? The problem with Jordans is not Michael Jordan. Yes, he's the spokesman. Yes, it's his brand, but the problem is black people need to control ourselves. We can't be mad at Michael Jordan for making money because they're high price shoes, which should therefore make them more exclusive. So the logical thing to do, the economic thing to do, would actually be to raise the prices even further, not lower the price. If you lower the price, what you're going to do is make them not valuable at all. So nobody's going to want them. So Jordan's not going to put himself in financial straits for you. That doesn't make any sense. But he could raise the price. Instead of them being $200, he could raise them to $500 or $1,000. But because niggas is going to be niggas, that's not going to matter. You see, that's the problem. The problem isn't the price of the shoes at all. The problem is the fact that people worship the shoes regardless of what they cost. What should be happening is people should say, those are too much. I can't afford them. I'm not going to buy them. Or I can't afford them, so my kids are not going to get them. Instead, we say, no, we got to get them for our kids. No, we got to get them for ourselves, no matter what, even to the detriment of our family. Stephon Marbury's been making shoes for years, but the demand for those shoes really isn't going up. Nobody wants them because they're cheap, because they're not considered a luxury brand. And the problem in the black community, or this particular problem, stems from materialism and consumerism. It's not Michael Jordan or Nike or any of these things, because even if Jordan raised the price to hopefully bring down demand, it would just make them even fewer and further in between in the hood, which would probably mean more people would be getting killed for them because less people would be able to afford them. So you don't want that. What you really want is for people to learn how to control themselves, to prioritize, to figure out what's important that they spend their money on, rather than buying luxury brands, Gucci, Prada, Jordan, Louis Vuitton, all of these things that you really can't afford. Maybe you should take that money and put it into an IRA or a CD or something that's not as sexy, or some type of asset that appreciates in value. We have got to stop blaming other people for this particular problem. America is one of the most lush countries on the planet, right? There's opportunities out the wazoo, but a lot of us, we don't see them because we're so busy being miserable, blaming the white man and all this stuff. It's like, okay, now you get money and now you're a coon, and just like ridiculous shit like that. Like, that's not the problem, okay? The problem is we think there's only one way. We think that, and you know what? And like I said, I've said this. The problem with the real discrepancy between wealthy people and poor people, it's not nice stuff. It's exposure and access. And a lot of wealthy people know about things that poor people frankly don't know, because when you're too busy focused on whether or not you're going to eat tonight for dinner, or where your next meal is going to come from, you're not worried about diversifying your portfolio or investing in something. We don't think that far ahead, and I get it, I understand it, but chances are, if you live long enough, you're gonna get old. So we need to start living our lives that way. We need to start thinking about the future, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road, instead of thinking about next paycheck and next month and New Year's and Christmas. Like, there's life beyond these days. Just like when we have kids, we look at our kids, we expect our kids to grow up and have full lives. So why are we not thinking about those entire decades that are going to pass throughout our child's lives? It's not Jordan, okay? It's not Jordan. If black people decided today to stop buying Nike products and put that money back in our pockets, we could do all types of wonderful things. Whether that be investing in our own, we can come up with our own shoe brands. That's the other thing. When I say opportunity is out there, and maybe it's just people don't know, it's pretty cheap to produce something in China, right? And that's why Jordan's able to do what he does. Now, if we take all the money we're spending on Jordans and create our own shoe brand, get some money together, go over to China, design our own stuff, and put out our own thing, well, then you can create your FUBU. Like, that's what FUBU did. FUBU said, for us, by us, we're going to go do our own thing, and we're going to create our own multinational clothing corporation. That's why Damon John has so much money. He didn't go to Nike and have Nike put Nike checks all over his shit. You become wealthy by becoming an owner, right? Jordan's a partner, and Jordan is fine. Like, that's the thing. Jordan's not even concerned about that because he has amassed so much wealth, nothing else matters. Or that this stuff doesn't really matter to him. So you can't look at him and say, well, why doesn't he do that? That's not it. You can't look at his bread and say, why are you not doing this with your money? He doesn't have to do what you say he should do with his money, right? He's managed to get this far without your input. In fact, you can't advise him because you're worried about the price of Jordans. That's the problem. Look, I've come to realize that all of America's problems can be solved by the people. People who are supporting Bernie Sanders are not even listening to what he's talking about. He's literally telling you that everything that he's promised, he can't deliver unless the people are willing to stand up. And I'm willing to bet that most people aren't going to do that, right? It's not that I don't want them to. It's that I look at people's behavior. Bernie Sanders just told you that everything that you want, you can get right now. But instead of going out and getting it and demanding it from your government, your politicians, you're keeping up with the Kardashians, you checking out the NFL schedule. You don't really care about that stuff. And but you do care about complaining about it. So I get it. It's a mental transition you got to make. But once you do, you'll realize that the problems that you blame other people for are actually your fault. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff that isn't. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that, has been that way forever. And, companies are taking advantage and all these laws. But it's because the people aren't paying attention. The people aren't following politics. People aren't saying, hey, wait a minute, what's that legislation you just passed? Run that back. And because we don't do that, we don't demand that of our politicians, they're going to get away with it. There's so much that they lay out, we do nothing about, and they're just like, look, man, I can't help these people. So that's on them. All right. Good luck.